Hello and welcome to a special episode of Cylinder Radio. Does the COVID-19 global pandemic, impending economic recession, and social distancing have you feeling anxious, disappointed, unstable, or unprepared? This is for the students who lost their graduation ceremonies, the hardworking parents whose financial future is in jeopardy, and those who carry resentment about their current situation. 2020 isn't turning out the way you had planned, and you're struggling with that. I hear you, and I've invited 3 of the most equipped people I know to have a discussion about how to get through this time. By the end of this discussion, I'm positive that you will have more confidence and fortitude to move forward during not just these uncertain times, but for the rest of your life. Dr. Neeta Bhushan today is a successful dentist, author, global success speaker, and international mindset coach, wife and mother. But as a teenager, she lost her mother, father, and brother within the span of 5 years, leaving her to raise her youngest brother on her own. Sidney Smith today is an Ironman triathlete, a respected and well-known outdoorsman, father of 4, and an inspirational public figure. I can speak personally that he has gotten me out of bed many times to go for a run. But Sidney was born with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a degenerative nerve disorder that caused Sidney to spend most of his life with broken feet and limited physical abilities until his late 20s when he was faced with a choice. A young man with a new and growing family, he had to decide whether to fuse the bones in his legs together and be in a wheelchair or amputate. He chose amputation. From the hospital, he watched the Ironman triathlon, and in 2020, after several years and countless hours of training, he completed it. Melvin Robert is an entertainment triple threat. As a television host, actor, and vocalist, he currently serves as the anchor of the morning news program, The Beat on One, in Los Angeles every morning on the default channel, Spectrum One. Also, he has been in countless theatrical performances and has been featured as a soloist with the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles in several concerts and on ABC's Good Morning America. In addition to all that, Melvin has been a committed educator and has been a teacher, counselor, and administrator on all levels from elementary to university. He is successful by any definition, but he grew up in Inglewood, California, in a community that was far from ideal for him, shamed and bullied at school for who he was, lacking mentors and a roadmap to success, and surrounded by negativity. Welcome to all of you, and I'm so honored to have you here, truly. To get started, I'm gonna just throw out some rapid fire questions. So just the first thing that kind of comes to your mind. So Sidney, what is a quote that you love?
Ooh, a quote that I love is, challenges is what makes life interesting, but when you overcome them, it's what makes life meaningful.
Well, that's good.
That's awesome. Melvin, same question.
One of my favorite quotes, when I graduated high school, I got this card from one of my favorite teachers of all time, Mrs. Jerry Eckert, my Spanish teacher in high school. And she wrote in the card, "Melvin, I always want you to remember that trials are not enemies of faith, but opportunities to prove one's faithfulness." And I have carried that with me throughout my whole life, like half my life now.
That's awesome. Yeah, Neeta?
So good. Ooh, I would have to say one of my early mentors, and actually he wrote a book about this, but Marshall Goldsmith was an early mentor, and he's a coach, and his quote is, "What got you here won't get you there," which means that whatever got you to the point of where you are right now, you'll probably require a different skill set, mindset, tools to take you where you want to go.
That's good.
Neeta, what about a book that changed your life?
Ooh. I would say this book called Philosopher's Notes. And it's by this man called Brian Johnson. And it's actually a Cliff's Notes version of all of the Spirit Greats. And what's interesting was that book came at a time when I had really hit rock bottom. It was, I left a really tumultuous relationship. I actually had to flee in the middle of the night, and it was on December 31st. And this was while I had this external outward success of an amazing dental practice, and I was trying to keep it all together, but I had crumbled. And so this was while I was climbing out of my hole in my cave that I was in. It was one of the books that actually helped where I am today, which then led me to actually investing in Brian Johnson himself, because he created this movement around wellness. And so, with that book, I still have on my bedside today.
Cool. Sidney, what's a book that changed your life?
Well, yeah, a book I just actually read recently. It's been, and I read it a couple times. Is the "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins.
Yeah.
I know it's a popular book. I know he's kind of got a potty mouth, but there's a lot of really good nuggets in that that's helped me kind of realize that, you know, when you reach the point where you think you've given your all, there's always going to be more. And so it's just helped me take things to the next level. Realize that I don't think I'll ever know what my full potential is, but I really enjoyed this journey. It's made me stronger, and everything really comes down to the mental side of things, and what even though there's things that you can't control what happens to you, what you can control is what's in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Melvin, what's a book that changed your life?
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I read it like a couple times, maybe even more a year, because I feel like the principles in there are just great foundations, like just to move through life. Four simple things, as he said, pieces of wisdom, but they're just a great foundation and guidepost for just moving about the world and interacting with folks, you know?
Very cool. Yeah. And the last thing, because this is a podcast, among other things, what is your favorite podcast right now to listen to, Melvin?
Oh, you know what podcast I've really been into? Sean T, the trainer who did like Insanity and like all like T25. I really like, he's got a podcast called Trust and Believe, and that's what I've been listening to lately. I think he's great. I'm really inspired by him. That's like right now.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Neeta?
Well, so actually, I mean, right now, because we are at home and we're potty training our toddler, who is about 18 months old. I'm definitely digging. It's this podcast called Unruffled, which with Janet Lansbury, who wrote the book There Are No Bad Kids. So that's basically what I am digging at the moment. But I do listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah. And Sidney?
Well, first of all, I used to do P90X like way back in the day. So Beachbody, all that stuff. I don't have a Beachbody now, but what's the name of that podcast? I'll have to write that one down, because I love Sean T.
It's called Trust and Believe.
Okay. I love new podcasts. So I don't have one that I stick to all the time. I kind of just have a mix. But right now, what's been keeping me mentally focused is some of the hobbies I love. And like Will said, I love the outdoors. I'm a hunter, fisherman. I like to spend a lot of time in the mountains. And there's a podcast I listen to called The Rich Outdoors that talks a lot about some of the things and some of the tactics I hope to get better, just to kind of get my mind off some of the things at work and just to focus on what I love.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to get into some of the questions now to help the audience to kind of contextualize everything that's happening for them and maybe give them some better perspective, because that's what I try to do with this podcast. Is it's all about perspective. So life throws us all curveballs, whether it's health setbacks, unexpected disappointments, loss of loved ones, things like that. We often call out like, this was not my plan. So can you recall a moment in your life when you were thrown an extreme curveball, and walk us through what that was like for you and how you overcame that? Can you just bring us a story of like a really unexpected curveball that was thrown your way, and how you handled that and what you learned from that specifically? So yeah, Neeta?
Yeah. Yeah, I can go back into something truly unexpected that kind of changed the course. I was a senior in high school, and it was it was a year after my mom died, and it was homecoming, and I had just applied to colleges and things like that. And I was born and raised in Chicago, and my parents were, my mom was from the Philippines, my dad was from India. And so cultural backgrounds were kind of, they were definitely geared towards the side of educational success is everything. And so I remember that this homecoming dance was going to be really exciting for me, because it was a year after my mom died that I could actually do something fun for once. And I knew I was going to meet my brother after school, because he went to a rival school, which was across the street from my high school. My high school was Lane Tech, and he went to Gordon Tech. And it was that day that he actually collapsed in front of his school, and he didn't have his inhaler. And so he had a massive asthma attack, and they tried to revive him, and he collapsed right in front of the doors, and he was with a friend. And so needless to say, I did not make it to any sort of homecoming dance. We were all paralyzed and in shock. It's sudden death, and he was 15 years old. He was not an athlete. He was really overcoming his asthma. So and it was a year after my mom died. So it was just like tragedy all over again. And it really made me not, I didn't end up leaving Chicago. I went to a school that was in Chicago, a college in Chicago, and I had to step up, take care of my father, traditional Indian father, and my younger brother at the time. So so that definitely threw things for a loop. I remember that for that last year of high school, I couldn't really concentrate. I mean, I was in such I didn't realize the gravity of the loss, but there were some of the things that I use to this day that I talk about in terms of being mindful and even having grace and gratitude for yourself, even when shit goes down. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but when things really happen, when things happen that are just so out of your control. I mean, I remember screaming, crying, just being able to articulate my emotions the best that I could. But I picked up journaling at that time. I was about 17, and to this day, that's been one of the main practices that I still use. So that's been one of the key methods that helped process grief, and then actually take it to how I can help others process their grief and situations and setbacks, because then you're writing it on paper, you're allowing your emotions to come out on paper, and you're also you're not attached to those emotions. They don't define you, and the experience doesn't actually define you, but you actually have it on paper. So now you can experience it, but then let it go. So that was a really cathartic, or a really great exercise that I've carried on to now.
Yeah. Melvin, what's a curveball that was kind of thrown your way, and what it was like for you and how you overcame that?
Well, there was a job I wanted, a TV job I really wanted, and I didn't get the job. And it was really hard because I was going through like a testing period on this particular show, and they were screen testing me, and they were having me come back fairly often, and actually quite frequently. And I was doing really well. I was rating really well. I was always prepared. I would write the segments. I mean, I was really like just all in. And they wouldn't put me on a regular contract. Like, they would not give me. And I would see some of the executives there, and they just wouldn't talk to me, and they wouldn't return calls from my agent. And I wanted this job so bad. It was, just a dream of mine to work at this particular outlet. And it was so debilitating in some senses, because as much as I felt like I was performing and I was delivering, to just have somebody walk by you and not even acknowledge you, like not even like barely say hello to you. And it was so hard for me. I felt like I was like, I say negative 50 million feet underground, just because it's like, you can't say hello. I'm delivering good work for you. So after pushing and pushing and pushing, I finally got to the point where I was like, this is silly. Like, I'm not being seen here, and I gotta kind of see this for what it is. and I got to move in a different direction. And I was really bummed because it really, 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 it was what I thought was like a dream. It was a dream. Mm-hmm. And then if I would have stayed there, I wouldn't be where I am now. And my agent, called me a few months later and shared this opportunity with where I'm at now at Spectrum News 1. And they were launching this brand new show and this brand new 24-hour news channel. And I went in and, subsequently I screen tested and interviewed and I got this job. And I learned from that experience that, we have these things that we want and we have these things that we desire. And in your brain, it was like, this is my thing. And there was like, at this moment, like there could be nothing greater, like as an entry point. And then the universe or God, whatever you believe in, blows your mind and goes, oh, you thought that was good? Well, I had something that literally is like better than you could have ever like dreamed of. And everything that I said I wanted to do, like I wanted to be somewhere that was, I could showcase my sense of compassion and I could lead with my heart and I could bring people joy and I could expand the consciousness of the human collective. And I could do it in a very smart way, but also a very like feeling compassionate way. I do the morning news, which I've always wanted to do because I love morning TV. And then I also get to do my own like show in the evening that's all about arts and culture and exploring people's passion. So I got like everything that I wanted. And so, but if I would have gotten that other job at that other, TV outlet, I wouldn't be here. And I probably would have been buried like in the corner, you know what I mean? Because they didn't have an opportunity like this where I could have been a real prime player. And so it was really formative and it was a bummer, but look at where I am now. You
got something better than your plan.
Yes. Yeah.
For Sidney, does stuff resonate for you? Do you have like a example of like just a curveball where it's like you were planning something and then it just didn't happen according to your plan, and then what you kind of got from that?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell me my whole life story, or where do you want me to start? So I was born May 1st, 1980. No, I'm just kidding. So 2015 was probably just an epic year as far as like nothing went expected in my life. So that's the year I also lost my limbs below the knee. But what originally happened is I lost the first one because we thought it would be easier to be more mobile to do one leg at a time. But the problem was right after the first one, I got an infection, and the doctor looked at it and he says, you know what, we're going to have to amputate again. And I just was kind of afraid of, what was the unknown. I was afraid of like, is this what my life's going to be like? It's just constantly losing body parts. And in addition to that story, me and my wife planning to have our fourth child. And she was pregnant and we were really excited about, growing our family and we were going to stop at 4, but about 22 weeks into it, we ended up losing the baby. And then similar to Melvin's experience, during this whole time, I was also applying for a job I thought would be perfect for my situation. I thought it was going to be a great job. I interviewed it. I traveled for it. There's like 50 something candidates. It came down to the last 2 and I ended up not getting the job. And so it was all 3 of those things hit me all at once. It was just a major curveball. And at that point I thought, I can let all these fears of, the unknown and is life's going to end up getting better, take control of me, which at one point in my life it did. And I realized, that's really what was holding me back. And it wasn't my legs. That was the disability. It was the fear. And it was, the love that I have with my wife. The disconnection wasn't that we lost a child or during pregnancy. It was the fear that I had. And overcoming that fear was just, it took constant mental strength. Some of it was trial and error. Sometimes it was a bad day, but most of the time I had to take some effort to work at it, and just accept the fact that the one thing that's consistent about life is that it's always going to be inconsistent. And so since the end of the year, I ended up losing my other leg, and we had another with the other amputation. We just did them at the same time. And it was shortly then, about 5 months after that experience, I was able to compete in my first triathlon. I ended up getting a different job, which I have now, and it's an amazing job, better than the other job. In fact, that other job, the business ended up closing, and everybody that was working there got laid off. So that was a hidden thing. And then one of my favorite things, I'll show you a picture. This is my family now. And we ended up having another baby, and this cute little thing here on my arm, she was our fourth child. So it's just funny how things works. And like I said, at that point where I thought, this is the end game, there's why move forward is like, I could just sit and be like, woe is me, and life is horrible. Mm-hmm. But you got to make that choice. You have to stick to that choice. This is who I am now, and stick to that point, and good things will happen. There was bumps in the road. Just like I said, nothing is going to be consistent. And even I look at my life, and I've had some bumps, and I've overcome challenges, and I have accepted the fact that I'm going to have more challenges. And that's really where peace came into my life, is when I've kind of accepted that, things don't always go as planned, but you got to still make the best for what you got.
I think I feel that very deeply, because I love Oprah. I'm like a big Oprah fan. And I've heard her tell it so many times in interviews, but she talks about how she was up for the movie The Color Purple, and she really wanted it. And she bought the book, and she would pass it out to everybody that she knew at the time, years ago in Chicago. And then she went through the audition process, and she didn't hear anything. So she tells a story about, you guys ever heard this? So she goes to a fat farm, and then she's walking around, and then she's blessing the actress who she thought was going to get the part. She's like, I'm going to pray till I can go and I can see it, and I can just feel good about going to see the movie. And then somebody runs out on the track, and they're like, you have a phone call. And she goes into the office, because it's pre-cell phones. And it was Steven Spielberg, and he goes, hey, I hear you're at a fat farm. If you lose a pound, you're going to lose this job. But she just talked about before that moment of singing, I surrender all. Mm-hmm. Just walking and just singing, I surrender all, because she's like, when you've done all that you can do, you have to turn it over, and you have to just surrender it. Mm-hmm. And I remember with this whole, so many experiences in my life, especially recently with TB, I was so bummed, and it was hard to walk away. But I just kept going back to that quote from my teacher, trials are not enemies of faith, but opportunities to prove one's faithfulness. And I would always say Mel, how much do you believe in yourself? How much do you believe, right? It's about your faithfulness in you, and turning it over, and you just believing this is going to work itself. It has to, because I believe it that strongly with every fiber and every ounce of my being, and you just surrender it, right? But it's got to be the belief on the other side, too. It's hard.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. I love that story. It's that short story about the Chinese farmer who has a very small farm and just a few horses, and one of the horses runs away. So all the neighbors come over, and they say, you lost one of your horses. That's so sad. And he says, maybe. And then the horse comes back 2 days later and brings a whole bunch of horses back. And now he has a whole bunch of livestock. And they go, you have all these horses now. That's so wonderful. And he says, maybe. And then his son is out trying to break one of the horses, and it falls off it and breaks his leg. And they say, oh, your son broke his leg. That's so sad. And he says, maybe. And then the conscription officer comes and is recruiting for the military, and they don't take his son off the war because he has a broken leg. It's yeah. And so, maybe you really don't know what your plan is. So, I think that's, just so much wisdom coming from you guys. Thank you. You have all had what I think the general population would consider valid excuses to give up and not strive forward and do the work that you do to help others. One wouldn't even look down on you for quitting. In fact, you might even be more celebrated if you looked at yourself like a victim, like you're a victim of your life. But you chose to continue, and you still continue to choose not to. Sidney, when we did our podcast, I brought up to you, I said, Sidney, you had an out. You had an out. You could just sit at home and watch Netflix and take drugs and just chill, and no one would blame you. No one. And your response to me was, I knew that was a trap. And that has stuck with me since we had that conversation, Sidney. And my question for all of you is, how do you maintain the desire to get back in the game despite tremendous loss, disappointments, setbacks? Like, what is it about you three weirdos that will just, like, you can't be stopped? You're just like, I am not going to give up. I am going to keep moving forward. And even though society oftentimes is saying, like, you should just take a break. It's okay. Come on in, relax. The three of you are saying, no, I'm not going to be stopped. And I'm curious, what is it in you that is that way? Yeah, Sydney, because this is from our conversation, actually, that prompted it.
Yeah. Well, it's safe to say, for me, I wasn't always like that. You know, it's not something that I feel like I'm special. And I say that because I firmly believe that everybody has the capability of being a stronger person. And, you know, as your audience hears us, some of you might think, well, I wish I was as strong as, you know, Melvin or Neeta. But, you know, I don't have it in me. That's just not my personality to be a strong individual. I'm weak. And I was that person because that's what I told myself all the time. I thought, you know, I could never, ever be that strong until some of the trials that I was given in my life, and it almost put me in a position where I needed to take those leaps and bounds. I'm not saying that everybody needs to have some traumatic thing happen in their life to be a stronger person, but what I have learned about some of the trials and happiness is to keep myself busy. And that's, you know, I know it's hard right now because, you know, a lot of us are locked down. There's so many, you know, ways to be creative, but that's what's been my medicine, is to keep myself busy, to find things to avoid the, you know, thought process as well as me. Now, don't get me wrong, Will, I do like, you know, I just watched Tiger King on Netflix. I do watch Netflix from time to time, but I don't sit there and indulge in because I know it is a trap. And when your mind is idle and we're doing things that are idle, that's when, you know, something out there, whether it be the adversary or just maybe our natural man or woman instincts, is to take the easy road. And there's nothing good that comes on that easy road.
Yeah, Neeta, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, I would say that there's two things, and obviously it's kind of it's influenced so much of the work that I do now, which is it's really building your grit, and you know, it's growing that resilience. And these are characteristics that come over time and with every small setback. You know, and I see this now because I have a son, I have a child, and so, you know, you see this at every milestone, right? First he was crawling, and then he was trying to get up. And, you know, I could be one of those psycho moms and try to make him walk as fast as he could, but he's going to fall. And so he fell and he stumbled, not once, not twice, like at least 10 times. But each time he stood up, it was such a reminder for us, you know, as teachers and educators, because it was like, oh yeah, you know, why can't we go back to when we were children, when we would fall and stumble over small things and then have the opportunity to get back up and to rise even stronger and better than before. And each of you listening right now have that capability. You know, I coined the term grit as an acronym because there's a lot of things that can happen, and you have choices and you have circumstances. And with each choice that you're given, and with each circumstance you're given a choice. You can either choose to or choose not to. And, you know, there's no right or wrong. It's just, it will lead you to that next step. And so grit is the acronym that I talk about in my book, and it's grow, reveal, innovate, and transform. And it's most of what we've been talking about today, which is when you are open to growing, when you're open to just being aware and accepting this reality right now, yeah, it sucks. We're all at home. we all can't really do much. But that's the reality. So once we make peace with it, once we, like Melvin, and Sydney were saying, once we can accept it, and once we can surrender to it, like not trying to control it, because right now we're not even in control. And I think the fact that we're not in control is causing us to get fearful and anxiety and overwhelm and stress, because maybe we just haven't learned the tools to manage our mindset, to manage our own states. What can we do? What are some of the things we can do? And so when you go from a place of grow, reveal is accepting what is, which is, okay, I accept that I feel sad. I accept I feel not motivated. I accept like I feel like shit. I accept that maybe I do want to binge watch TV today, but I'm not going to judge myself. Or tomorrow I'm going to read that book that I said I was going to read, or walk around the block just to get some fresh air and get out of my pajamas and wear something nice and cute or whatever. But to change that mindset, then we can go to innovate. And that's the I, innovate and then transform. Innovate is you're committing to an action. So you're committing to that action, and then transforming is the action itself. So, and while we kind of move along, even with our conversation, but even along in our journeys to building this type of grit and resilience, it starts with some of the smallest setbacks, like a failure that you had, or a job that you didn't get, or, and then of course, to some monumental things that, everybody shared here. So it's really important to, I like to call, celebrate your wins as a result. And your wins can be the smallest, tiniest little wins, the tiniest things that can get you to your day, through your day, and to really notate that. That's why I believe a lot in journaling. And so definitely, and these are the schools and the skill sets that we don't tend to learn while we're in school. Parents always ask, do you have to go through something so terrible to build grit or resilience? Do you have to go something so traumatic to do that? And I always say, no, you don't. We can teach that just by allowing us to fall and allowing us to see and peel away, what do those emotions really say about us, about what we're avoiding because we're distracting ourselves, because we are binge watching TV or on our devices, instead of going right through, to that root and saying, what does that actually mean? And asking a different question.
Yeah, grit is such a great word, especially, for the three of you. I've watched it on social media, and I know you all, to some degree, and just watching just the grit. And Melvin, when you were on my podcast, we were talking about how you just kept taking these jobs for free, just like you kept working and hustling for free, just to kind of prove your worth, and just getting back in, getting rejected over and over and over again, and working for free eventually paid off. Like, how do you have that mentality to just always get back in the game?
That's a great question. I believe so deeply in the power of our minds, and human beings are so powerful, and more powerful than I think we often realize. And I believe in resilience. Like all of us here today. And I was a kid that got bullied really badly. From age 7 to 13, beat up, called names, thrown in the trash, stink bomb exploded in my eye. So from a very early age, I had this thing, I learned that who I am is not valued. So I had to unlearn that as I got older. And then I I was in education for 11 years, but I always had this dream of being on TV. So then I choose this profession that, you're on display to for people to watch you, and then to, at times to get judged. And I'm so grateful though that I went through what I did in my adolescence, because it gave me a sense of empathy and a sense of compassion that I have carried with me, and that have really served as a foundation in my life, because I know what it's like to not be wanted, or to not be valued, or to not feel like you're important, or to not feel like you matter. And it sucks. And, it was just always in me. My grandpa as a kid used to, sometimes if my mom and dad couldn't take us to school, my grandpa, my mom's dad would pick us up to school. And he would be in our room. My brother and I had these bunk beds, and we'd still be sleeping. And this man would be pacing back and forth. And he would just say, it's hard, but it's fair. Get up. It's hard, but it's fair. Get up. It's hard, until we got up. But that was like, I mean, over like 30 years ago at this point, but I have carried that with me. And so when I find myself in a moment of challenge or a moment where I'm like, this sucks, I give myself the permission to go, this feels icky right now, but this is where I am. You know, it doesn't feel good. We're not going to stay here forever. I had this therapist years ago that said, look, sometimes the mental work gets tough and you just got to, you know, get on the merry-go-round. But the key is you got to know when it's time to get off. Can't stay there forever. And I just, you know, I sought out therapy for myself. I'm very pro therapy. I went to graduate school. I got a master's degree that's focused in human development and counseling. I really studied the intricacies of the brain. And I just, you know, we have to keep pushing because I have the power to will what I want. And I have the power to, you know, intake a thought and then to ask myself, okay, how are we going to process this? Like, what permissions am I going to give myself as it moves through my body? You know, we have control over three things: the way we think, the way we feel, and the way that we behave. We don't have control over anything else. And I think knowing why you do things. I also think that that's a big guidepost for me too. Mm-hmm. Knowing like why. Like Marianne Williamson has a great prayer that I often say before I when I get up in the morning, as I'm walking when I park my car in the lot and I walk into the station, into the main entrance, the reception, you know, what would you have me say? Where would you have me to go? What would you have me to say? What would you have me do, and to whom? And I always like think of that, and it grounds me to remind me of like, why do you have this platform every day? To be of service to people and to uplift people. But the why is so important, right? And it helps you to curb your ego when it tries to tip in and get the best of you. But that's been a big guidepost. And I feel like that cocktail of mental work and knowing why and resilience, like it's like that cocktail that keeps me moving forward and keeps me getting up, because we're all going to fall, but we all have the power to rise. And it's in the rising, and it's in our ability to do that and how we do that. And it's going to be different in our different situations. And, you know,
yeah, I have Viktor Frankl's book behind me, A Man's Search for Meaning. And in that,
the best.
So good.
You know,
that's a good book.
Who has, he with a why can endure almost any how. And that seems to align with the three of you and what you're sharing and thinking long term of like, I have something coming down the pipe. I'm not going to focus on what feels good now. I'm not going to focus on what I want to do now. I'm thinking about what I want to do, you know, what I want to do with my life. And that's that trap. It's the instant gratification trap that so many people fall into. And it's kind of easy to, when you have an excuse. And right now, because people are at home or lost their jobs or kind of limited, it's a great excuse to just say, F it, throw your hands up in the air and just focus on what feels good right now. And I think that the more that you can resist that and think about this is an opportunity for what you really want, and you're given time, you're given an opportunity now, I think it's a good way to shift our minds. If you could go back to the lowest moment of your life, what advice would you give yourself? And the reason I'm asking, I don't know if this isn't probably the lowest moment of a lot of people's lives. It's it's a moment that's uncomfortable and unknown, but for some people it is. And everyone's going to have the lowest moment of their life. And perspective is reality. And no matter what it is, it could be something extreme, like what a lot of you went through, or it could be something that objectively you say, oh, that's not that big of a deal. I don't like using that kind of language, because I think that if it's real to you, it's real. And we need to recognize that people's struggles are something that need to be recognized. But the advice that you've gone through it, a lot of you have gone through just such hardship. So how do you, if you could go back, what advice would you give? And this is a tricky question, because part of it, the advice is like, you'll be okay, because I know the three of you and you're okay. So that's tough. But for someone who's in the middle of it now, and I try to do that with my students sometimes, I'm like, oh, you'll be fine. It's like, that doesn't help, Mr. Reusch. Like, I don't want to hear that. What advice, you're better at this than me. What advice would you give to yourself at that low moment? Maybe bring us into a little bit of like what the emotions were that were going through you, so people listening can go, I know that feeling. And then how would you talk yourself kind of through that? So if anyone wants to begin.
Yeah, I can start. I remember that, one of those big, that really pivotal moment, really life altering moment was when I decided to leave that really crazy relationship that I was in, my first marriage. And, it was marked by violence and fear and just toxicity. And so at that lowest time, I felt like I was a fraud. I felt like I was a failure because I had been, living into my family's dreams of what I should be doing. And I was afraid that people were going to find out that I was living this lie, that everything was happy on the outside, but there she was. Well, she's not good enough, and it was all of these things that I didn't feel worthy, because I thought people were going to consider me broken because I had lost so many members of my family, and then going through this really crazy time. And it was a feeling of just hopelessness and just fear, because I didn't know what the next steps were going to look like. I didn't know I was going to live. For the first few weeks I was living in my car. And so if I could go back to that, that younger Neeta and say, you know what, like, this is the best opportunity. You might not see it right now, and it totally sucks. I understand that you are afraid. I understand that you feel like nothing's going to change, nothing's going to get better, that everything is a shit. And why are you even living at this point? Nothing even matters because you can't even see the end of the tunnel. But I promise you, with each step, things will get better, because I promise you, with each step, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity to learn so much more about yourself. There's an opportunity to grow in ways that you've never even thought of. And there's an opportunity to build that strength. And as a result, that's why we're all here today. But that's I would say, the first fundamental messages that I would give.
That this is an opportunity for you.
It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. Like, absolutely, you feel stuck. You feel alone. You feel like there's no way out. There's no hope. But there's this. This is where you are going to grow. And I promise you, 6 months from now, this is going to be a tiny splinter. And right now it feels like the biggest weight on your shoulders. And it's supposed to feel that way. But on the opposite of that feeling, there's joy. And sometimes to appreciate joy, we have to go through the depths. We have to go through that darkness, because sometimes it's going to rain, it's going to thunderstorm. But then you're going to really appreciate the sunshine in the weeks and the days to come, because now you know the opposite of that exact feeling.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
Sidney, if you could go to those times, I'm guessing it's like, when you got the bad news or going through the pain, rehab, something like that. Like, do you think about that? Like, what advice? Like, I wish I knew this at the moment. Like, what specifically would it be? Like,
well, there's two things. The first one is, I would say is, well, I let me narrow it down to one.
Yeah.
Is gratitude. And for me, when you're sitting in the hospital bed and you don't know if you'll ever walk again, you don't know if your wife will find you attractive, whether you'll keep a job, it's really hard to be grateful. But what took me a while to gain happiness and realize that everything is going to be okay was some of the things that I forgot how good I have it. Like my hands still work, that I do have a beautiful wife. I could put food on the table. I have a car, and there's so many people that just don't have that. And when I remember the blessings that I've had throughout my life, that's really what helped me overcome some of the struggles and some of the pain that I experienced. And it's just to remember gratitude or be grateful. It's just, it's just something that I think about still to this day, of how blessed I am. And I don't even think that, I don't even think about my legs when that happens. But I would use that advice almost sparingly. If I could go down and tell, that Sidney to think that in depth, I do feel like there is a strong piece of learning things the hard way. But I do think, it is good advice. Serving other people is another one that comes to my mind that I think that just kind of helps along with that I wish I would have gained sooner, because serving other people really brought a lot of happiness and compassion for others, instead of sitting there, woe is me.
Yeah, where you devote your focus, focus on what you do have. You're always going to have things, and you can use that energy on where you're lacking or what's going wrong, or on what's going right, but then also focusing your energy on others. That's awesome. Sidney, Melvin, I know you talked a lot about, the low times growing up, especially in tough communities where it wasn't cool to be who you are. There's a lot of kids who struggle with that, like their identity and who they are, and not feeling like they fit in and things like that. Like what would you say to the younger you who just felt like I'm weird, no one likes me for who I am, I should try and be someone else, I wish I was someone else, I wish I was more like them,
and I did,
all that stuff.
Well, to that exact point, that was actually going to be that was the defining moment I was going to share. Like I said, I got bullied so much, but a real defining moment for me was joining the gay men's chorus of Los Angeles, because I had even though I had, I came out when I was 23. My parents are amazing. I mean, I'm so blessed and fortunate that I have, my mom and dad are wildly supportive. They're the best people. They were just embraced me and were, it's like not even a big deal when I came out. They were like, my dad was like, we love you. I've always been proud of you. I've never been more proud of you than right now. I mean, they're the best. But it was me that kind of had just all these barriers that I had built up around myself. And I came out when I was 23, but I still had a lot of internalized homophobia. When I turned 30, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone. I was around my birthday, and I was I'm not really meeting people. I had been a musical theater actor, and I would meet, other gay guys during shows, but then when the show would be over, we'd all go our separate ways. And, some of them I keep up with, some of them I wouldn't keep up with. And so she said, one of my best friends, Trinity, she goes, well, what do you think you could do? She goes, sounds to me like you need to go find some community. What would that look like for you? And I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, what do you think? Let's think about this. What do you think you could do? Because you got to go find your people. You got to go find your tribe. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to one of my gay friends, and he was in a gay kickball league. And I was like, I don't want to play kickball. I grew up super athletic, but I always hated playing sports, even though I was really good at it. And so I Googled, no joke, I Googled gay men singing. This could have gone 1,000 different ways. The gay men's chorus of Los Angeles came up. And I had never been to a concert of theirs, but I watched some clips. I'm like, they're great. So I signed up to go to the, you have to audition. And I get an email back from the membership president, and he gives me an address. And I looked at the address, and I'm like, why does this address sound really familiar? But I couldn't place why. Well, I get there the day of rehearsal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the Gay Men's Chorus of Los Angeles rehearses at the same place that I went to elementary school. Oh. I hadn't been there since in 20 years. So I pull into the parking lot, and I walk through the gates. Literally, everything's in the same place. Walk through the gates, go in the parking lot, the playground set's on the right, the school building's on the left. And I walk to go down these stairs, because that's where the auditorium was, where the rehearsal was, for the auditions were. Still in the same place. I walk by the trash can that I was thrown into when I was 7 years old, the first time I was ever called a faggot. Oh. And I had this moment, and I was like, whoa, really? The universe truly has such a profound, magical, mystical way of healing us when we're ready to receive the lesson. And I end up subsequently getting accepted, and I get into the chorus, and there's 300 guys, nearly 300 men, age from like 20s to 70s, right? And literally every week I park my car, I'd approach that trash can to go down those steps to get to the auditorium. And I would have, and for the first like several months, like it was kind of anxiety ridden because that was very traumatic. Yeah. And I would put my hand over my heart and I would literally say to like the little Mel, I'd say, Mel, you're going to be all right. Like you can do this. Like I was healing him. And I would say, look, you just got to get to the other side of the trash can, because on the other side of the trash can is love and brotherhood and empathy and kindness and some of the greatest people I had ever met in my whole life. And it was that experience of being in that community that healed me and that truly transformed me, because I had so much shame, and the shame was covering up the joy that was there, Neeta, as you said just a bit ago, it's like the joy is there, but it was just covered up with shame. And I had to eradicate that. And by just being around them and singing, and because I had kind of stopped singing for a little bit and thought I was done with that and doing solos with them, but just it was the love and it was the support and just the message of like using your voice to serve. And I didn't know that my voice could be that powerful, and I didn't ever have that confidence in my voice. And that experience, I did that for 5 or 6 years. 5 years, and it teed me up to be able to like have this platform now where I'm communicating information. It's like, if you don't know what your voice sounds like, how are you gonna sit there and phrase things or communicate things to the general public, especially now, especially in the midst of this uncertainty that's happening. And so that was such a transformative thing, to go back there every single week and walk by that trash can. It was in the same place like 20 years later. So anyway, that healed me.
That's crazy.
So good.
Wow. So kind of along those lines, just to bring this kind of like wrap it up in a bit, is what opportunities, because this is kind of along with all of your stories and comments about things we've been talking about, is what opportunities do you think are available right now in the quarantine and the uncertainty and the stay at home and the social distancing and all? What opportunities does this produce that you three might see and share with the audience, as far as there are opportunities in front of us that you wouldn't normally have, but because of this situation, because of it, you have these things in front of you. Can you share with just something very practical that the people listening can go, I didn't think about that. Just like what the three of you said, is like, I didn't recognize that this is in front of me. I was so focused on the fact that I'm losing my prom, or I lost my job, and I'm not minimizing people's struggles at all. But perhaps we can help to open, pull off the blinders a little bit, show what they might be missing as far as opportunities during this specific COVID-19 time. Can you think of like an opportunity that might be kind of under wraps right now?
Yeah, first I want to say, if you are kind of struggling with your emotions, I would say limit your news intake, like right away. Just limit your news intake to certain times of the day, because all of us feel it to some extent. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know that just as human beings, if we're going to watch certain things that show us statistics and all of the crazy, stories that are happening, it's so needed, but we need to limit our intake so that we can actually focus on the things that we want to focus on. Because like you said, Will, there are immense opportunities, and just even today with some of my young clients, they're sharing that they're taking to social media. They're using this opportunity to lend a hand, to share their voice, to share their expertise. I've seen people who are playing the piano, who played in their closets for years, coming out and playing for people, on on YouTube, on Facebook, recording themselves. They're not, concert pianists, but they're just playing because they want to be able to add value in some way, to add value, to entertain, to have fun, to maybe educate and inform, maybe to inspire. So you all who are listening, there's an opportunity for you to be able to share your gifts with people that may not have ever seen you before in all walks of life, because we are now connected more than ever. I mean, this is just an example of that right now, that COVID-19 has really united all of us here to serve you all. So there's that. There's also opportunities where you can make masks. You can serve your community and add value to them. That I've been seeing threads going on. What can we do? Can we make meals for the doctors and the staff? In our area, can we give back to the soup kitchen and donate certain things? So there's various levels of opportunities where you can actually serve others during this time. I know some people who are actually, using this time to catch up on courses, and there's free courses, and there's, opportunities to get creative, get your learn on, and figure out some of those hobbies that maybe you wanted to really do, but now you've got all this time, and we can utilize this to grow. Because once we focus on growth, what happens chemically in our brains is we naturally make more of that dopamine. And when we're naturally making more of that dopamine, we're less likely to binge watch Netflix or binge watch, the Instagram feed, because we're actually working on something that's going to enhance our growth.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Sidney, are you seeing opportunities around here? Because you kind of are someone who always looks for those kind of angles. Do you see things that are going on right now that other people might not be?
Yeah, in my community, we're a small town. We're about 7,000 people. So it's a little hard to try to find things to do in some cases, and we're just starting to get the snow to melt to be outside. But I think some of the opportunities out there, I guess let me start over. It's got to be this moment. You got to look at it as an opportunity to find a purpose. What is a chance that I can gain something out of that? If you focus that there's a purpose to this, there's some things that I could do. Maybe there's some things you could fix. I think forgiveness is a big thing as far as happiness and feeling good about yourself. If you're holding some of that anger, maybe this is an opportunity to mend some of those relationships. Just like Neeta explained, is serving other people. I think service is a huge thing when it works in many different forms. I know it might be tricky. Some of the things that we do with our elderly is we'll leave a little sticky note on their door with their phone number and say, hey, is this something that you could do? I know some of us be like, well, what's the fun in serving people? I don't understand. Where am I supposed to have fun, or where am I supposed to get all that dopamine release and so forth? And this is a temporary state that we're in. Got to remember that things will get better, and just put some of those fun things that you find entertaining on hold, and just sit back and maybe look at this perspective of how can I help somebody that really can't even help themselves. Those are just some of the things that we've done in our community. Another thing that we've done too is we've just created a Facebook group called Vernal Strong. That's the town I live in, and within this group we have an area in a parking lot with a bunch of items of people have of excess, whether it be toilet paper or cleaning supplies, and it's just donated. And so people show up and be like, hey, I don't have toilet paper, and someone had donated toilet paper. It's just a way to serve others. And again, I've never seen anything like this in my community, but it's moments like this that actually have been a blessing because it's brought us closer together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Melvin, are you seeing, opportunities? I mean, all that stuff is so good. Healing relationships. I know I could do that myself. A chance to put yourself out there using YouTube and all the things that you've kind of kept under wraps. Now is a chance to focus on it. There's so much there. Are you seeing things like that?
I've actually been focusing a lot on my place, like where I live, and focusing on my space, and really just appreciating, because sometimes during the week I'm busy or I have, finished the morning news and I got to go do a shoot for my other show. But now we're not, lots of productions on hold. And so outside of the news in the morning, and even my other show, we're doing it from my house once a week. So and even as a result of shooting it at my house, I've just been paying just extra attention to like, oh, I need to get some new towels. I need to get some new towels, like I need some new sheets, and I got some new sheets, like just like paying attention to just my space and creating more comfort and just care like at home. So that's like been a big emphasis personally I've been placing. And also it's been nice, like I've been singing more. I've been, like appreciative of like the way the sunlight hits the window over the sink in my kitchen at a certain time of the day.
Slowing down a bit.
Yeah. Like really, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in closing, I don't know if you saw the Mr. Rogers documentary, but it's fantastic. And I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. I guess one of my aims is to be like a cross between Mr. Rogers and Jocko Willink. Like, I feel like that's like a good. But in that he was in the 1960s. He was watching television and he said, what a wonderful platform, what a wonderful tool, and it's being used so poorly. And I think it should be used better because it's so powerful, but it's being used just to teach kids the wrong things and stuff like that. He wanted to be something different. And that's the way I saw social media. And I think social media could be used in so many beautiful ways, like this conversation here, and putting it out to people. And it's often not. It's often used in really, really damaging and bad ways. And I think that this is an opportunity to use it for something really powerful. And I love all three of you have awesome social media accounts that just are inspirational, and you're available, that people can reach out to you and contact you and work with you and all of that kind of stuff. So can you just share your social media, how people can see you and interact with what you're doing and things of that nature? Because I think that what we should be aiming for is to turn social media into giving bigger platforms and more influence to the three of you, essentially, and less about a guy with 3 Breitling watches driving his Lamborghini, running over money and driving a gold-plated yacht and stuff like that. I think that there's a lot of things that you can consume that are going to make you worse, and there's a lot of things you can consume that can make you better and feel better and go off and do amazing things in the world. So that's what I'm aiming to do. So Neeta, where can people find you, see what you're up to? I know Emotional Grid is available and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you guys can definitely come out. I play a lot on all the platforms, but mostly I'm on Instagram at Neeta Bhushan, and I do these weekly mental fitness gems on YouTube under Neeta Bhushan as well.
Awesome. Yeah, Melvin?
I am _Melvin, MELVIN, Robert, ROBERT, no S, _Melvin Robert.
And that's on all the platforms and everything?
Yeah. But I do Instagram the most.
Okay. All right, cool. Neeta, do you use Instagram the most, or is it kind of spread across? Yeah, Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram the most.
All right. And Sidney?
Yeah, I too use Instagram. My handle there is try no feet, TRI_no feet. Yeah, that's my story on Facebook. If people are still using that, it's just smith.sidney or Sidney Smith, Sidney with an I, probably the only Sidney Smith with prosthetics. So it's one way you could find out.
Your social media are so like different and diverse as you guys are, but they're all just awesome. There's a ton of really cool quotes that Melvin puts up that I just kept like reposting to the point it was probably getting really annoying. Neeta has all these just really useful things about how to, think a different way and how to structure your mind and all of that kind of stuff that's so useful and practical. And then Sidney has stuff that will just make you feel like a lazy piece of crap. There was one where he was like on a vacation And he went down to the lake, like before the sun was even up, and he put a headlamp on his goggles and then started swimming in the lake, in like a cold lake, before the sun was up. And you're just like, yep, it's a Wednesday. And I was like, oh. So the social media accounts of all three of you are just a must, and I will definitely put them in the notes and things like that. Thank you to the three of you. Thank you, truly. Like, I'm honored to call you friends, and I'm so excited to bring you, the three of you, together, and then and share you with the audience. So really appreciate it.
For facilitating, Will, and bringing it together and bringing the conversation to the people. We appreciate you.
Ryan. Yeah.
Yes, we need heroes like you right now,
Yes.
Will. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Will.
All right. Take care, guys.